Hello, everybody, and welcome into a new episode of Prep Rally, a high school sports podcast brought to you by the Daily Journal and djournal.com. Brad Locke here, joined by Gene Phelps and Blake Morgan, our high school sports guys. This is a webcast, and it's a podcast. The webcast normally comes to you live about 11 a.m. at djournal.com, having some issues this morning with YouTube Live, so it's coming to you a little later than normal. The podcast version drops later in the afternoon. Find it in iTunes, your podcast apps, or at preprally.djournal.com. You may notice we're in a different spot than usual here if you're watching us. And if you're listening, you may notice that there's a lot of background noise. We are coming to you from the Bancorp South Arena, where they're having the Imagine the Possibilities Career Expo. A bunch of 8th grade students from around the region coming in over the course of 3 days to get educated about the career possibilities as they move beyond high school. It's a good time for them to start learning about that. And we did the Memo podcast from here today, Derek Russell and myself. You can listen to that later on today in iTunes, your podcast apps, or memo.djournal.com. So we're doing the prep rally from here as well, and we're going to talk high school football, of course, because there's lots of it to talk about. So, Gene, Blake, how's it going?
It's going.
All these bright-eyed students hanging around, so
That's
many
right.
possibilities. It's too late for us, but not for them.
Yeah.
No, but this is a cool event, and you can hear more about it on the Memo podcast today. But this is the Prep Rally High School Sports Podcast / webcast. So we're going to talk about high school sports. We're going to look back first at week 7 of high school football. We're going to rewind things. Gene had some big games, some big wins. Let's start with the game you were at, Tupelo. A tough little Columbus team there. They got a really good running back, and he got his, but nobody else from Columbus really got much going there. And
Yeah, I thought for like the 6th consecutive week, we've seen Tupelo do something a little different on offense this week. They took Stephon McGlon, the 6'3", 240-pound sophomore quarterback, and let him throw vertical. He threw for 3 touchdown passes.
Yeah,
and he was on the money at the receiver, and he's going to get at a really big game. Able to take a big win. Defensively, again, Tupelo had some problems with Kylan Hill, but who's a 4-star strong. When you're on deadline, you're going fast and totaling up the stats. I had him for like 80-something yards. He actually like 117. Not a bad night. Had a 65-70 for Tupelo. Actually was taking an angle on Hill down really see Chris Shannon to be a little bit more of the star playmaker on offense. He was a wide receiver. The guy runs a 4.3. You can't coach 4.3 speed.
No, you can't.
He's 6'2", 190. What's happened is Tupelo wanted to use him at cornerback, and his transfer did not get approved by the High School Team Association, so he only had an option was to come back to Tupelo. He came back. They put him at cornerback. I think he may have went kicking and screaming at first. If he goes D1, and he certainly has the talent to play D1, it'll be as a cornerback.
Wow.
I'm not saying he's not a great receiver, but Tupelo's got plenty of receivers if you've kept up with the wave this year. They have got 6 players right now, so they're using Chris Shannon where he needs to be. He's really a lockdown guy, too. Against Hernando the week before, when Tupelo won 31-0, Hernando came in averaging like 40 points a game. They had a receiver who was catching was their leading receiver. It had like 800 yards receiving.
Wow.
And they put Shannon on him. He had 2 catches for 4 yards.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
He shut him down.
And going back to the quarterback, Stephon McGlon, just a sophomore. We've talked about him since the preseason, and we're like, didn't know it was a 3-man race at one point for quarterback, and the San Journey kid that was in there early on a lot. McGlon, as much talent as he has and his size, he's going to be a bit unpolished, but and maybe this is just a product of the coaches just playing to his particular strengths, but he seems to be playing like a fairly polished quarterback.
He said last week after the game, he said, I'd like to throw more, but they got me running. One week he ran for 104 yards.
Yeah.
He's a load. I know I was in the press box at Columbus last week, and there's some guys sitting in front of me. I could hear them in the stands, and they're going, man, that guy is 6'3", 240 pounds. And they were really impressed with him, some Columbus fans.
Oh, yeah.
And he is impressive, and he's only going to get better. And I'm just amazed at how much he's improved in 4 weeks.
Yeah, seriously.
And he's been able to do everything they've asked him to do so far. I don't know what else he can do. Maybe paint the gymnasium or something, because he can run, he can throw, he can run the offense. He has command of it. Pretty mature for being 15.
Yeah, just a sophomore. Wow. So big win there for Tupelo as the Wave remains undefeated. And we'll look ahead to this week's matchup in a few moments. Another game, big game on Friday. Amory with a bit of an upset taking on Itawamba AHS. The Indians coming into that game undefeated. Now, you looked at their schedule. They weren't playing the toughest schedule in the world, but they were beating everybody. And then Amory, under a new coach, Alan Glenn, showing improvement and handing Itawamba its first loss of the year. And it wasn't even close, guys. 41-14 was the final. Looks like Amory maybe is getting back to form now.
Yeah, absolutely. They had that loss to Aberdeen, which really hurt early in the year. But
Aberdeen only has 1 win right now.
Yeah, and that's the only win, right? And, at that point, it did not look good for Amory. But talked with Glenn, and, he said the guys, they took a little while to trust in what, my vision for the team was, to buy in.
Sure.
And he's like, you can't build a program over the summer. And he said it took a little time into the year, a little longer than I wanted, but they're finally bought in, and we're seeing what happens when, they buy in and work towards one goal.
And a running back, Jartavius Jernigan, had a big game. He had 124 yards rushing, scored 3 touchdowns in Amory's big win at Itawamba AHS, by the way. That was a big road win for Amory. So the Panthers now 5-2 on the season, and that was the division opener for them. Yeah, so good start in division play there for Amory. And the game you're at on Friday, Blake, Calhoun City. We expected this to be a good game. Calhoun City, East Webster, 2 top 5 teams in our small school rankings. Ended up being a rout. The Wildcats winning 44-6. We kind of surprised it was such a blowout.
A little bit going in, especially looking at the records, you think that they would be pretty evenly matched. But talking to the coaches beforehand, East Webster's had a lot of injuries, and they're solidly coached and they play smart, and so that carried them through the non-conference. But talking with Coach Doug Wilson, he sounded hesitant to say, we're as good as we need to be hanging in these kind of games. But he also said that last season they had a similar loss, and then they won like 8 in a row after that. So he's not too down on his team right now.
And, Calhoun City is an awfully good team. And that's a team you're going to have to reckon with in the playoffs.
Oh, absolutely.
And obviously they played great on defense. And I was going back to look at some of the scores of their games. I mean, they've pitched 2 shutouts. They haven't allowed – the most points they've allowed this year is 21. That was in their one loss to Houston early on.
And they about pitched another one against East Webster. Yeah. Their quarterback or running back fumbled the ball on the 10-yard line, which was East Webster's only score, was a 10-yard drive.
Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, that Calhoun City defense is something else. Some other notable results from this past Friday, just want to touch on real quick. Pontotoc defeating Corinth. Pontotoc still rolling along, undefeated. 44-8 was the final there. Starkville, a bit of an upset, guys. Northwest Rankin defeating Starkville, which I believe at the time was our number 2 large school. 28-7, pretty decisive victory for Northwest Rankin. And then Lafayette defeating Ripley in a big division game, 28-14, the final there. Lafayette's kind of coming on strong now after a slow start to the season. Okay, let's look ahead to some of this week's big game, guys. Big games. Gene, go back to you again. Tupelo, our number 1 large school, at 6-0, 2-0 in division play. Another division game with South Haven coming to town. South Haven off to a decent start, 5-2, 1-1 in division. They've got losses to Oxford and Hernando. Oxford, a decent team this year in 5A. Hernando, as we know, got off to a fast start, but then they got shut out by Tupelo, and they've beaten South Haven.
Yeah, I think Tupelo's taking every game, serious. I know Hammond was a little bit disappointed with his team. Has been disappointed with his team this week in practice. He thought maybe there'd be a little bit more excitement in the fact that they're 6-0 and everything. Maybe they're just taking it from a workmanlike attitude, and they're relaxed.
Yeah.
That's one thing. But, to go on the road in 6A, to go to South Haven, I think this is, like they like to say, a trap game.
That's right. This game is at South Haven.
It's at South Haven. South Haven has Ed Rich as the coach. Ed's done everything from throw every play to run some, mostly throw. This year they're about 50-50. They're balanced on offense. But, if Tupelo's defense can continue to play as well as they've played, and Tupelo's offense, who knows what to expect this week. They may run the ball a lot more. They're really good, and I've written about this, of taking what the defenses give them. And so it'll be interesting to see this year or this week, how they'll handle this game. But if they can win, they'll be 7-0 and hosting a team they're tied for the division lead with, South Panola, which is off to kind of a rough start.
Yeah, South Panola's been very vulnerable this year.
Yeah, they're 2-5, but both their wins have been in the division. So
2-5. Man, they've gone like an entire decade without losing 5 games. It seems like.
And so now you've got, that game could be for the division lead next week. It'll be in Tupelo. Of course, Tupelo's not looking ahead to that one. They know South Haven came down here last year and beat them in overtime in a game that had a really long rain delay. I think they kicked off about 9:15.
Yeah. All right, well, let's also look now at Pontotoc and Amory. Number 4 Pontotoc taking on Amory. We just mentioned the Panthers coming off that big win over Itawamba. They have a chance to knock off another unbeaten team, 7-0 Pontotoc. Amory is on a roll, Blake. You mentioned you talked with their coach, Alan Glenn. They've won 4 in a row and seem to be hitting their stride. I'm sure they're just say last week was a statement win. This would really be a statement win if they can pull it off.
Absolutely, especially when you consider how well Pontotoc's been playing.
Oh, yeah.
I was looking up the stats. They're winning games by an average of 27.
Yeah,
it's under almost 4 touchdowns. And that's been one big thing that I've talked with Coach Jeff Carter at Pontotoc about is how do you think this team's going to handle adversity when it comes? Because it'll come at some point.
Oh, yeah.
They have not really faced it. He said they've only been down once this season, and that was to Houston, or the first game of the year. Yeah. Other than that, they have not even been in a close game.
Right.
And he said, well, we have a senior bunch. Their starting quarterback is the coach's son, who's a senior, who's having a heck of a year. And, he says we have a lot of seniors and a lot of juniors that have been playing for 3 years, and I don't think we're going to panic if we ever get down. And so he's expecting a lot of big things going into the division.
That game's at Amory. That should be a good game right there.
Oh, yeah. It'll be a big crowd, I'm sure.
Oh, no doubt. And then you've got the Itawamba AHS, as we mentioned, suffering that first loss of the season. They'll try to bounce back with a trip to Shannon. As both of these teams have 5-1 records, but Shannon is 1-0 in division play. And that Shannon run game, Gene, I know you've written about them recently. You got Vincent McIntosh, the 295-pound running back, and they got the Huddleston kid.
Right.
And so they seem to be rolling along just fine.
Those guys can pound the ball, and they can also throw it too. So.
Yeah. So that should be another good matchup. Itawamba will be at Shannon. And Daryl Carter, Gene, we talked in preseason. He thinks this offense can do really well, and I guess he's happy with them so far.
I think so. And, coming into the season, we were expecting a lot of big things out of Shannon, and I think we're starting to see that now.
Yeah.
This will be a good test for him.
No doubt. Some other notable matchups this week. You've got Mantachie struggling this year, but they're going to take on East Union, which is not struggling. The Urchins are 6-1, 1-0 in division. They're a number 5 small school. They moved into the rankings this week. Yeah. And in fact, we had a story on Joel Wilkerson the other day.
We did. I mean, he's got over 1,000 yards this season already.
Well over 1,000.
And has had some 200-yard games, I believe. And he's having a great season, just a sophomore.
Just a sophomore running back for East Union. You can go find that story at djournal.com. You got Tishomingo County will take on Corinth. Both of those teams are 3-4. Both of those teams looking for their first division win, I believe. And then you've got Morville at North Pontotoc. Morville at 3-3. John Keith, he's they're off to a decent start. I mean, a new coach, a program that has been up and down in recent years, but
and I believe he beat Aberdeen last week.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
So yeah,
on that?
exactly. They did. They beat Aberdeen. So a big test coming up at North Pontotoc. Okay, let's do athletes of the week. We do this every week.
Hey,
go ahead. Yeah, athletes of the week, Gina. We do this every week. We recognize a male and female athlete for their exploits on the field. Who is the female athlete of the week?
We've got another softball player, and just a note here: softball playoffs crank up next week.
Already.
So we'd like all you coaches or scorekeepers or whoever to please let us know about your matchups. This slow pitch softball is not on max prep, so it makes it tough for us to keep up with standings, with schedules, everything. This is the toughest sport for us. So we'd love to know who you're playing, when you're playing, but the playoffs start next Tuesday, and they play 4 weeks. 4 series.
Right.
The 4th series is the championship series down in Ridge.
Yeah. So people can email you, gene.phelps@journalinc.com. It's journalinc.com. Okay, female athlete of the week.
Destiny Catledge.
Destiny Catledge.
Plays for South Pontotoc. Hit 3 home runs Monday. And South Pontotoc 16-15 win against Tupelo. Tupelo's got a pretty good ball club.
That's good. That's a big win for South Pontotoc.
It was, and for 3 hits, 3 home runs for Destiny Catledge.
Okay.
Walnuts, we talked about this young man the other day, but Montario Hunt.
Yep.
Rushed for 289 yards, had 322 total yards, and scored 6 touchdowns in their win against Manatee.
Yeah, had a season-high 29 carries as well. Montario Hunt, running back for Walnut. So congrats to Montario Hunt and Destiny Catledge, our Prep Rally athletes of the week. And that'll do it for this episode, guys. I want to remind everyone that we're on Twitter at DJournalPreps. Follow us there so you can find out when new episodes drop. And also on Friday nights, we're tweeting scores from that account like crazy. And so check us out there. Remember, again, the Memo podcast 3 days a week. I got a new episode today here from the Imagine the Possibilities Career Expo, interviewing a lot of people about this big event. And so be sure to check that out in iTunes, your podcast apps, or at memo.djournal.com. Okay, good stuff, guys. A lot of big games this week. Looking forward to the coverage in Saturday's Journal. We'll be back next Wednesday. Until then, y'all have a good week.